There was a man in France who, as a child, witnessed the murder of his sister, but in middle age he orchestrated two murders himself. Is this a distortion of human nature or a collapse of morality? On June 3, 1974, Jean Baptiste Rambla was 6 years old. In the family apartment in the Sancta district of Marseille, he was caught up in a whirlpool of anxiety. I have an image in my mind of a shy and panicked child, recalls Roger Ardouin, a European journalist who was one of the first to arrive at the scene. His mother was crying and his father was pacing like a lion in a cage, not knowing that this feeling would accompany him for the rest of his life. The police arrived at the scene like a disaster, accompanied by journalists, breaking the privacy of this Andalusian immigrant family and recording every word in their notebooks. A few hours earlier, 6-year-old Jean and his 8-year-old sister Mary were playing under the Sancta building in Marseille. The two children were excitedly picking wildflowers, wanting to make a bouquet for their mother. Suddenly, Jean saw a gray car slowly driving over, stopping in front of the two children, and a mysterious man got out after the car door opened. He was wearing a gray suit and a red sweater inside. The mysterious man kindly said to Jean and Mary, "Hey, two little guys, my little black dog is missing. I'm looking for it. Will you help me find it?" The two children, worried about the cute little black dog being lost, immediately agreed to help. The mysterious man took Mary in one direction and let Jean go in another direction. He said, "Little brother, you go around this side to look for it, and I'll go with your sister to look over there." Jean obediently did so, but did not see any little black dog. After looking for a while, he returned to the original place, but Mary and the mysterious man did not come back. The innocent hearts of children cannot imagine the cruelty of the adult world, and their clear eyes cannot see the dark corners of some adults' hearts. They don't know that when an adult smiles, his heart may be full of malice. When an adult who is not in a state of danger asks for help from a child who is obviously weaker in physical and intellectual strength, he is likely to have ill intentions. Jean waited for a while without any guard, still not seeing the figure of Mary and the mysterious man. After the parents heard the news, they immediately called the police. In the living room of Jean's home, the atmosphere was suffocating. Roger Ardouin witnessed a shocking scene. The father was shouting at the little boy. He blamed him for letting his sister leave. However, she was the older one. But Pierre Rambla is a Spanish-style parent. For him, boys should take care of girls. Tension, shock, and guilt fiercely stimulated Jean's nerves. He had persistent stomach cramps, vomited many times, and kept repeating a request to his parents, "Find Mary, find Mary." Jean's attitude was very stubborn, far beyond his age. The police questioned Jean for 2 full hours. He told the police that the black-haired man who took his sister away was wearing a red sweater. The police pulled out photos of various suspicious individuals with criminal records, such as exhibitionists, abusers, and mental patients, for the boy to identify. However, Jean thought that the man in the red sweater was not among them. Just when people were at a loss, a strange thing happened 20 kilometers away from the crime scene. A Peugeot 304 accidentally hit the car of Alain Aubert and his wife. This is just a minor accident, but the reaction of the offending car is unusually nervous. It accelerated and knocked over a parking sign. Eager to flee the scene, Mr. and Mrs. Aubert suspected that there were secrets in the car and chased after it. After chasing for a while, the offending car suddenly braked and stopped. Mr. and Mrs. Aubert witnessed the driver of the offending car jumping out of the car with a quite large package and running into a farm with lush vegetation and complex terrain by the road. Mr. and Mrs. Aubert no longer rashly chased and reported this matter to the gendarmerie. The police quickly found out that the abandoned car belonged to a certain enterprise sales representative. His name is Christian Ranucci. There was a knife, a pair of blood-stained trousers, a hair highly similar to Mary's hair, and another unidentified hair left in the car. Ranucci's suspicion rose sharply. His photo was spread all over Marseille with the police notice and became well known overnight. The next day, someone called the gendarmerie's hotline and provided an important clue. Yesterday, a man who looked very similar to the Ranucci in the notice was lost in the mushroom farm and asked for help from the local residents. I helped him leave the farm. According to the caller's statement, the suspected Ranucci appeared in the mushroom farm at a time after the hit-and-run driver got rid of the Albert's chase. If they are the same person, it is completely possible in time, indicating that Ranucci fled into the farm with the big package, discarded the package there, and then fled with empty hands. What does this mean? Everyone understands that the probability of Mary's rescue is already extremely slim. After a day and night of searching, people found a red sweater somewhere in the farm on June 5th, and next to the red sweater, they found Mary's body. This small body was covered with injuries. The murderer stabbed this 8-year-old girl who couldn't fight back as much as 15 times. Mary's father, Pierre, participated in the search and fainted on the spot when he saw his daughter's miserable condition for the first time. The suspect, Ranucci, was arrested. At first, he admitted the crime and drew a map of the kidnapping scene and confessed the location of the weapon, which was consistent with the actual situation. But soon he recanted and denied all the charges. Ranucci argued that whether he could accurately draw the map of the kidnapping scene or confess the location of the weapon left, it could not prove that he was the murderer of Mary. It probably means that the case-handling personnel might deliberately induce him to make the above confession. The police asked him why he wanted to drive away after hitting Mr. Albert's car. He replied that he was just afraid of having his license revoked and affecting his work. Objectively, there are indeed a few facts that are beneficial to Ranucci. First, as the first eyewitness and Mary's brother, Jean's identification of the suspect and the car involved in the case is biased. Ranucci and some other people stood in a row in front of Jean for identification, but Jean did not recognize Ranucci. The little boy said, "The gentleman who asked me to help find the little black dog is not here." When identifying the car, Jean pointed to other vehicles and did not identify Ranucci's Peugeot 304. Second, the red sweater abandoned next to Mary's body does not match Ranucci's size. However, the final judgment did not exclude the above doubts from the defendant Ranucci. This result is not difficult to explain. Jean was only 6 years old and had just suffered a huge mental blow. When he went to the parking lot to identify the car, the media reporters surrounded him like a human wall, and countless flash photos scared him into a startled bird. Adults may also have the possibility of memory disorder in the same situation, let alone Jean is just a little boy. His misidentification is also understandable. As for the red sweater, this type of clothing generally has a certain elasticity, and the size being a little smaller or larger will not affect anything, so the size mismatch does not negate Ranucci's suspicion. In 1976, Ranucci was sentenced to the death penalty and executed by guillotine, a traditional French execution method. However, at that time, there was no technical condition for DNA identification and fiber identification, and it was not possible to improve the evidence chain by testing whether the fibers attached to Ranucci's body were the same as the fibers on the red sweater, and whether there was Ranucci's DNA on the red sweater and the weapon, so the above doubts have not been eliminated. In the wave of the abolition of the death penalty movement in French society, the case has been continuously questioned. In 1978, French writer Gilles Perrault published the super best-selling book The Red Sweater, based on the case, which was later adapted into a movie and became popular for a while. French abolitionists of the death penalty regard the misidentification of the 6-year-old boy as one of the most powerful bases, repeatedly emphasizing that Ranucci is very likely to have been wrongfully executed to prove the necessity and legitimacy of abolishing the death penalty. The black hole of this traumatized child will be used by Ranucci's supporters from time to time. He is caught between unbearable guilt because he survived, because he let his sister leave, because he did not recognize Ranucci when identifying, and in his view, he was used by Perrault, a psychiatric expert report in June 2018 asserted, cited by Le Monde. In 1981, France finally abolished the death penalty. However, the aftermath of the murder of Marie Dolores Rambla did not subside. Beneath the seemingly calm surface, undercurrents were indeed surging. In 1982, Jean Baptiste Rambla was 12 years old. He was in the 5th grade and found it difficult to concentrate. His teachers labeled him as restless. During a French class, the teacher asked the students to open a grammar book. But at the top of page 87, there was a photo of Ranucci, accompanied by text emphasizing his alleged innocence. The student snapped. In a fit of rage, he tore out that page and threw the book against the wall. "My son-in-law was in his class," said Roger Arduin. His teachers and principal gave him a severe reprimand. They suspended him for a week, apparently not taking into account Jean's experiences. Time flew by, and over the span of 30 years, Jean Baptiste Rambla blended into the crowd. He passed his accounting BEP, served in the military, and worked in a company that provided catering services for television shows, including A Better Life. A tragic irony. He was a quiet boy with few friends, living above a bar. "We hadn't heard of him," noted Henry Michel. Until he suddenly reappeared in the headlines, his role took on an unsettling reversal. The child of the victim had become the executioner. The timeline moves to 2017 in Toulouse, an important town in southwestern France and the headquarters of Airbus. A 21-year-old girl named Cynthia Lunabou worked as a cleaner in a shopping center. She was born in Angola and moved to France with her parents. The life of immigrants is mostly hard. However, judging from Cynthia's photos, she is a cheerful and lively girl, working hard to make money in the new country, renting a small apartment in a popular area of Toulouse City, and also having a boyfriend. At 12:30 noon on July 21, 2017, her boyfriend received a message from Cynthia, which was very ordinary, just like chatting in daily life, without any strangeness. But after that, for several days, her boyfriend and parents could not get in touch with her, and they had knocked on her apartment door, but no one answered. 6 days later, on July 27th, due to Cynthia's disappearance for several days, Cynthia's father called the police. Firefighters entered Cynthia's apartment, and the scene in front of them was shocking. Cynthia was lying naked in a pool of blood. Her neck was almost broken off, her face had been brutally hit, and the wound turned into a terrible black color. The forensic doctor determined that Cynthia was murdered on July 21st. The news of the daughter's misfortune came, and Cynthia's parents were heartbroken. Cynthia was their only daughter, and her parents immigrated to France just to create a better life for Cynthia. As a result, Cynthia was brutally injured by a stranger in France. The police investigated the scene and found that the murderer seemed to have no counter-investigation awareness and left DNA samples everywhere on the door handle, shower head, and the victim's right hand's fingernails. The police quickly locked the only match through the DNA database comparison. When the computer popped up the name of this person, people were stunned. Jean Baptiste Rambla, born in Marseille in 1967. Yes, it was the first witness of the murder of Marie Dolores Rambla 43 years ago, the brother of the victim Mary Jean Baptiste Rambla, who is now a middle-aged man approaching 50. The surveillance video at the scene of the crime also captured his image entering and leaving Cynthia's apartment during the crime period. What's more shocking is that Jean was not a first-time offender. The file shows that in July 2004, Jean's employer and girlfriend Karina went missing, and more than 7 months later, the police found a rotten female corpse in Jean's garden shed, which was Karina. Jean strangled Karina to death for no reason and hid the body in the flower shed. Regarding the motive for the crime, Jean said he couldn't explain and couldn't remember what he did to Karina. In 2008, Jean was sentenced to 18 years in prison for the Karina case and was paroled in 2015 for good behavior. In 2017, Jean obtained the qualification of heating engineer and was preparing to join the renewable energy industry. After the police investigation, Jean took the train back to Marseille from Toulouse on July 24, 2017, and had the time to commit the crime. In view of the solid evidence, the Toulouse police arrested him. It is hard for ordinary people to imagine that this man, who carries 2 lives, has a gentle and quiet appearance and can even be said to be quite handsome. His state is the same as after harming Karina in 2004, saying that he doesn't remember having seen Aisha and doesn't know what he has done to her. When the DNA test results and surveillance videos were presented, Zhang admitted his crime. He described the cause and process of the incident like this. Since the murder case happened 43 years ago, he has been suffering from a double sense of guilt. 1. He left Mary to go away, which led to Mary's death and his own survival, and his father Pierre's reproachful gaze made him feel extremely guilty. 2. His misidentification led to endless controversies over the murder case. In addition, he believed that the author of the book, The Red Sweater, Perot, used him, and the defense lawyer for the Karina case did not really defend him, and he was haunted by self-blame and hatred. Zhang claimed that a few days before July 21, 2017, he felt that someone was watching him and trying to persecute him, but he didn't know who the other party was. At around 1 a.m. on July 20th, he was attacked by a man and a woman in the park near his home, and the male attacker fired at him, but missed. Zhang said that he had never followed Sansha. In the afternoon of July 21st, he passed by the apartment building where Sansha lived and felt that someone upstairs was watching him. And this person looked very similar to one of the attackers from yesterday. Zhang was furious, as if all the people who slandered him were in front of him. He suppressed his anger and entered the apartment building as if nothing had happened, ringing the doorbell of a house on the first floor at will. The door opened, and the homeowner was an old lady. He pretended to have the wrong door and turned to climb the public stairs. Zhang went to the fourth floor and knocked on the doors on the left and right. The homeowner on the right did not make a sound, should be not at home or asleep, and the door on the left opened, and the person who opened the door was Sansha. Zhang said that what he saw at the time was not Sansha, but the embodiment of all the objects of hatred. So, he punched Sansha's face countless times, continuously attacked her neck with a knife, and finally cut her throat. Zhang said that he was not aware that he was hurting others during the above actions, thinking that he was frantically typing letters in front of the computer. Type, 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 and then Sansha stopped breathing. Zhang said that he felt very guilty about Sansha's experience, but he should not bear criminal responsibility because his harmful behavior was made under the guidance of hallucinations and was an unconscious act. For Jean's defense, the prosecution and Sansha's family raised strong doubts. The investigation confirmed that the watchers, park attackers, and other enemies mentioned by Zhang were purely false. The medical appraisal also proved that Zhang had no symptoms of hallucinations, and his relevant statements were deliberately fabricated lies, with the purpose of pretending to be mentally ill to escape punishment. The following statements by Zhang also support the above appraisal conclusions. Asked, "Did Sansha say anything to you?" Zhang replied, "I avoid thinking about it." In fact, he clearly understood his own guilt and did not dare to face the soul's interrogation. Asked again, "Why did you take off Sansha's clothes later?" Jean's answer was, "To eliminate traces." Since he knows how to eliminate traces, it indicates that he was able to recognize the nature of his behavior when committing the crime, and he was definitely not in an unconscious state. On the day of the crime, Zhang did not have hallucinations. There was a pathological impulse to harm that occupied his brain. He couldn't restrain this impulse, so he randomly entered the apartment building where Sansha was and looked for a target of harm. But it is obvious that when facing the old lady, his impulse could not be released. Just like in 2004 when he took Karina's life, young women were his ideal targets. So, Sansha was chosen by him. This was an unfortunate coincidence. If the person who opened the door was not Sansha, but another young woman, she would also fall into Jean's clutches. So why did Zhang, a naive and honest little boy 43 years ago, become an impulsive devil? Experts have carried out a series of discussions. They learned that when Jean's father Pierre took countermeasures against the Ranucci innocence theory, he always took Zhang with him, which lasted for many years. This experience is extremely harmful to Jean's mental health. Zhang has always been unable to get out of the childhood shadow. That is, his sister Mary was kidnapped and murdered in front of him, and his father Pierre's scolding, pointing out the wrong suspect, providing a basis for the Ranucci innocence theory, and being used by the author of The Red Sweater. Zhang repeatedly questioned fate. Why did Ranucci take Mary, not me? Hatred, anger, and the desire for revenge accompanied this poor little boy's growth, and the seeds of evil were conceived in his heart for more than 40 years, severely distorting his personality, leading to a pathological psychology. Zhang often fantasized, why don't I become Ranucci so I don't have to suffer like this? This pathological psychology is the root cause of his raising the butcher knife. Experts also pointed out that 43 years ago, there was no awareness of protecting the families of the victims. The media followed and filmed Mary's family a lot, causing significant psychological trauma to 6-year-old Zhang, and no one provided him with the necessary psychological healing, which is worth reflecting on. It must be stated that the above reasoning is by no means an attempt to excuse the murderer's crimes, but rather to provide a reference for preventing the same type of crime. Some experts have pointed out that Jean's childhood experiences, growth experiences, and psychological abnormalities cannot exempt him from responsibility. The prosecution also emphasized that he is an extremely abnormal potential murderer with a very high danger to the lives of others. Jean's anger in his heart may be ignited by unpredictable factors at any time, threatening the safety of others. In order to permanently prevent the tragedy of Cynthia and Karina from happening again, in December 2020, Jean Baptiste Rambla was sentenced to life imprisonment.